Sit back down and shut your trap. It's time for
Keeping it sports with them three.
Are you ready?
Well, I'll need some beer.
Are you ready?
You have to ask me nicely.
Come on now, don't be bashful.
Are you ready? Are you ready for...
Place for the best sports talk and news surrounding each league.
I can prove it with my usual flawless logic.
Hey man, this time I'm gonna do it my way.
What's your name again?
And now, here's your host, M3, Mike Rosansky.
Good evening, everyone. Hope everything's going well for you here on this Monday, the sixth day, of the month of December, the final month of 2021, getting started with a bang the last couple days between the college football playoff being announced, the week 13 of the NFL, even some exciting things in the NBA. But of course, as we all predicted, as we all thought it would happen last week, Major League Baseball entered a lockout scenario now that the Players Union and the MLB owners could not come to an agreement when it comes to their new CBA just yet. And hopefully this is not something that takes ridiculously long to get done. It will at some point get done, but you don't want it to go so long deep into the off season where you've taken the fans' attention away from it, and away from the off season, and B, where you're hindering free agents. Where say they get this done on Valentine's Day, which is right before the start of spring training, you're going to have some players really starting to feel the heat, really starting to be concerned that, I got to get a seat at the table here, and maybe take less of a deal than they more so deserved. You also don't want, as I said, for it to be, the hissing fight that it was last year getting the pandemic-shortened 2020 season going, because neither side came out well in that. And you expected the commissioner to come out with a statement last week, but if you read between the lines of it, it comes off as kind of, let's take a backhanded shot. Let's some way make it look like the owners are good guys here, when no one is truly the good guys here. He brings up how owners wouldn't agree to counter a reserve system and luxury tax unless the players agreed to advance a drop number in key demands, including time it takes to get free agency. We don't need to know that. We just say that, we weren't able to come to a deal in time for our CBA go out. We've entered this lockout, but you know what? We're very hopeful on making a deal very soon, and we look forward to doing so we can continue the activities of our off season. Not, what they were offering and what they weren't agreeing to take out of potential offers, because it makes no one look good. Now, if you listen to the end of last week's podcast, I was a little bit chapped, perturbed. I guess you could say those are good ways to put it, because I'm looking around, the landscape of baseball, and it was the most activity for the end of the month of November that I can remember. And it's clearly obvious. A lot of players wanted to get a spot before the CBA was up, out of potential concern over what could happen if there was an extended delay. If there was, what we're having now where there's nothing going on. I mean, it's even gone as far where with this lockout, you go to MLB.com, there's no players' faces, there's no players' names anywhere to be found. Now, you're more likely to find an executive's photo or name on MLB.com than you are with this. And no free agents can sign right now. There can be no trades being made. So players wanted to get the hassle of the offseason out of the way before this lockout coming down. And I was a little bit chapped, annoyed that the team I root for, the Yankees, weren't doing anything. Now, once this lockout's over, they are going to be active, I fully expect, because they can't just run it back with the same team that they were last year. You can't just have a scenario where Joey Gallo is the only left-handed hitter in your lineup. You have a clear hole at shortstop, and they've already admitted they made a mistake with the Aaron Hicks contract extension several years back, and realized that we got to go out and get a real center fielder, someone who's capable of playing every day, not, what muscle did he pull as he rolled out of bed this morning? But, my annoyance was coming because there were players that the Yankees could have used that were going off the table, that were signing elsewhere. And I was a bit perturbed about the fact that they would make an offer to Justin Verlander, who, once he pitches this coming April, will be the first time in almost 2 years he's throwing a pitch in a real game, but wouldn't make it at least an offer or have a conversation with Max Scherzer. That made zero sense to me. As well as, you look at that there were, as I said, free agents that came off the board that could have been of use to Yankees. The one free agent shortstop that I had interest in was Corey Seager, because left-handed bat would have fit seamlessly in that lineup, and as a guy that I think, as the contract goes on, you could have eventually converted him to third base. You also had pitchers that would have fit really nice in there at that number 2 spot in the rotation behind Cole, the likes of Robbie Ray and Kevin Gausman, signing with the Mariners and the Blue Jays respectively. Chris Taylor went back to the Dodgers. That's a guy, Yankees talked about wanting to become more versatile. Chris Taylor can play, 4 or 5 different positions and be in the starting lineup, playing second base one night and then out in center field on the next night, come back out and, play either first or third the day after that. And has always been a very reliable, useful player in his career. They didn't trade for the catcher from the Pirates, Jacob Stallings, that forced them to tender Gary Sanchez on Tuesday. And like I said, did not even make an offer to Max Scherzer. So I was a bit annoyed, a bit chapped, but once Seager went off the board, their plan became clear to me, and that's they're waiting for the new CBA to come out and see what the luxury tax rules are going to be. Although, Hal Steinbrenner is not exactly helping his popularity rating with the fan base when you see things come out on Tuesday that he was one of the owners that voted to lower the luxury tax threshold from above 200 million. I think it was at 210 to like 180. And see, this is the thing that pisses me off when it comes to the Yankees, because yeah, I think Hal wants to win, but it's become more and more clear to me over the years that winning is not as important to him as it was his father. Now, his father did a lot of stupid things, made a lot of deals that, hurt them for years to come. Like, for example, the Jason Giambi contract. And then you look at some of the deals they made back in the late 80s, early 90s, that until he got suspended and Gene Stickmichael had full control of this organization, they weren't able to get out of. And once he was suspended, they finally started to build the team the correct way, rather than just always jumping at signing players to stupid contracts. Or, even in more modern times, doing things like when Brian Cashman signed Jacoby Ellsbury, or the money that he's wasted on Brett Gardner, or the contract extension to Aaron Hicks. I didn't want to see dumb things like that, but I wanted to see movement, because there were players out there that were useful to them. But it's clear now they are going to wait for the new CBA. And there's still guys available. First base is something they're going to address, even with tendering Luke Voigt. That just means that they keep the right to trade him later this offseason, and they will do that, because their first base options you look at, it's either bring back Anthony Rizzo, who really wants to be here. Their names have been attached to the hip to Matt Olson all offseason long. Or there's the slight possibility that the Braves don't work out something with Freddie Freeman, and Freddie comes to the Bronx. You also still have Carlos Correa out there as an option at shortstop, although depending on who you trust, who report you believe in, there may be a lot of dissension and despisal in the current Yankee clubhouse over the idea of bringing in Carlos Correa. Well, that remains to be seen. But the one thing I can say is myself and my fellow Yankee fans can't complain too much. Yes, we can get annoyed at Hal Steinbrenner always penny pinching, and feels like his mantra of staying under the luxury tax is almost a self-imposed salary cap. And at times how it gets annoying where they only make trades if the opposition takes on some of the money. And he's more concerned with profit than he is winning. But let's face it, we've had it pretty damn good over the years when it comes to the Yankees. We've had a time, especially if you're in the age range of myself, or if you're 30 or younger, you have not experienced bad Yankee baseball. Bad Yankee baseball for us is not making the playoffs in 2008, 2013, 2014, and 2016. And even those years, they were competent and in the wild card race until the final week or second to final week of the regular season. The Yankees have given us a pretty good stretch here. The fact that we are getting close to 30 consecutive years without a losing season for the Yankees. There are teams that sometimes can't go 5 years without a losing season, and the Yankees have gone almost 30 years without losing seasons. So for those of us complaining, those of us freaking out, calm down. I mean, it could be a lot worse right now. Think about how good they've given it to us. Unlike the crap that we watch when it comes to the two football teams in this area with the Giants and the Jets. And they have become the models of ineptitude the last 5 years. Ever since the boat trip for the Giants and for the Jets, no showing in Buffalo in week 17 of the 2015 season, it's been absolute garbage. Neither one has had a winning season. Neither one of these teams has looked the slightest competent. Hell, the Giants, the only reason they were in the playoff race last year is because the NFC East was at its all-time lowest. Otherwise, that 6-10 record wouldn't have been celebrated or viewed as great as some Giant fans and some people in the Giants organization still think it was. And you look at what we witnessed yesterday. You have the Giants playing without Daniel Jones go down to Miami, who, I know they've gotten hot. They've won 5 in a row. Tua Tagovailoa's played really well the last 3 games. But the Dolphins, since the Dan Marino era, have not been, they have not been this powerhouse force. They've had a couple years there, with Chad Pennington and a couple other middle of the pack quarterbacks where they snuck in as the final playoff team. But for the most part, they've been nothing to write home about since Marino retired. Going down to Miami and getting your ass kicked in the last 20 years is viewed as an embarrassment. And yesterday was an embarrassment for the Giants as they're running Mike Glennon out there. You're watching Mike Glennon, you're wondering, Colt McCoy could have done this. Colt McCoy could have came out here and been competitive. They decided to go with Glennon while Colt McCoy's out in Arizona winning games for the Arizona Cardinals with Kyler Murray out for 3 weeks due to an ankle injury. And meanwhile, Mike Glennon, who his biggest claim to fame is that he looks like he could have played Napoleon Dynamite 15 years ago, and he's more so acting like Uncle Rico, overthrowing everybody left and right. He starts off 11 for 12 and then couldn't hit the broadside of a barn for the remainder of the game. It was an absolute crap show. And then I'm at MetLife Stadium while I'm trying to sober up from getting too drunk during the tailgate, because someone tells me at one point I ended up with my shirt off in 45-degree weather. That's a story for another day. I'm sitting there watching the Jets getting diced, getting picked apart by Gardner Minshew, of all people. Yes, that Gardner Minshew who got let go by the Jacksonville Jaguars, he comes into MetLife, has a damn near perfect day against the Jets, is slicing them apart, hitting Dallas Goedert at will. The Jets are getting burned up the middle by Miles Sanders to the point where they only had the football for 70 seconds in the third quarter. And you're looking at this and you're like, what is this trash? What is this garbage? The Jets they hire a defensive-minded coach as their head coach, and they've been the worst defense in football. They're the only team in the sport that allows 30 points per game. And then afterwards, you got Bryce Hall saying, "Oh, we did not prepare for Gardner Minshew playing this game, but we did. We were all week preparing for Jalen Hurts." It was embarrassing all the way around when it comes to New York football yesterday. Between the Giants having to play Mike Glennon and the Jets sitting there once again losing to the Eagles, who, you would think that the Eagles are the New England Patriots against the New York Jets. The Eagles are 12-0 lifetime against the New York Jets. And you would think at one point, that they would slip on the banana peel and have one bad week against the New York Jets. But, even in a week where you're sitting there and saying, oh, Zach Wilson played well in the first half, you're more so concerned about the fact that this team is continuously allowing 30 points per game every week, getting burned by quarterbacks that are only caring about their porn star mustaches, and not even being aware that that is going to be the quarterback that starts against you that given week. I mean, so like I said, I can get annoyed, get mad that the Yankees didn't make any moves before the lockout. But unlike the Jets and unlike the Giants, I think we've had it pretty damn good with them for the last, 30 years. And it could be a lot worse. The late 80s into early 90s Yankees were a lot like the crap we are currently watching from our two football teams that currently reside at MetLife Stadium. All right, got to get to a lot more football as this goes on here. Between, college football with the playoff being set over the weekend, as well as, the NFL Week 13 yesterday, where you still have, so much up for grab. I mean, you look at how many teams are still in the mix when it comes to the playoffs. It's almost eye-popping. And we talk about this month being a separator time for it. We'll go through all of that, also mix in some basketball. So please, sit back, relax, help put your feet up if you feel like it, and continue keeping it sports with M3. So, one more game to go to put things in the books for Week 13 in the NFL. And I'm in an awkward spot here because of what I have to do tonight. I have to sit there and more so root for the Buffalo Bills. Now, I said this to a good friend of mine, actually a former instructor of mine at the Connecticut School of Broadcasting, the great Brian the Fishman, earlier today on Facebook was commenting on one of his statuses about the Bills. And I said, no, unfortunately, I have to somewhat root for your team tonight. But it's with good purpose. Because we have to put this demon to bed. We thought they were dead. We thought they were gone. We thought they disappeared. But unfortunately, the Patriots are still alive. And unfortunately, that's going to continue until Bill Belichick ever decides to retire sometime in the time of 2035, when he's 83 years old, I think. By then, and even then, he'll still be very young for his age, and even then, he'll still be giving us absolutely nothing as far as answers in post-game press conferences, but at least then he'll have old age as a reason at that time. But, right now, you look at the playoffs, especially in the AFC side of things. With the exception of three teams, the Jets, the Houston Texans, and the Jacksonville Jaguars, everyone is still alive. Everyone is still in the mix, in the hunt, as we like to say, for postseason berth. I mean, we talked about the Dolphins a couple minutes ago with their win over the Giants yesterday. the Dolphins have won 5 in a row and have gotten themselves back in the mix. Tua is playing very well. He's completed 80% of his passes the last 3 games. And they sit here today. They are, a game and a half back of the Cincinnati Bengals, who had a kind of double deflating loss, I guess you could say, against the Chargers yesterday, because the Chargers get off to this 24-0 lead in the first 20 minutes of the game. Burrow had thrown an early interception. Bengals having some of their turnover problems that they've had this year. I mean, it's going to happen when you have a gunslinger like Burrow. But they race back, get this to a 2-point game heading to the fourth quarter, and you're thinking, this is going to be another Chargers collapse. And then Mixon fumbles, gives up a 61-yard fumble recovery touchdown to Tavion Campbell of the Chargers, and were never able to truly get their footing back. The Chargers are a weird team. They have a great young quarterback, but week to week, you never know what you're going to get out of this team. They had a chance to run away with the AFC West with the problems that the Chiefs were dealing with earlier this year, and instead, going 3-2. In their last 5 games, have allowed Kansas City right back in the mix. Kansas City's gone 5-0 in the last month, but most of that has been on the strength of their defense. Their defense, until the fourth quarter last night, hadn't allowed a touchdown since week 10. Now, their defense had been playing bend, don't break. With the Broncos able to move the football down the field against them, but never able to get into the end zone until the Chiefs were playing prevent late in the game, saying, hey, we'll just let the clock run down here. We're not going to let you beat us over the top. You still got problems where Mahomes is turning the football over too much, and this offense is not really clicking because they don't have that good, consistent ground game. I mean, their offense is basically Mahomes to Hill and Kelsey, and that's it. None of these other guys step up and be, that either that back out of the backfield that Kareem Hunt once was for them, or that, under the radar third option that Sammy Watkins was the last couple of years, where you're like, that's a guy that's a number 2 wide receiver on most teams, and he's, burning them down the field as their number 3. But, it's starting to shape up where you look at the AFC. And I would expect in the next couple of weeks, a couple of these teams to fall out of the mix. I mean, with I almost called them Oakland. Sorry about that. Las Vegas, the fact that it's starting to catch up to them what they've been through the all season long, with losing their coach, with one of their players getting arrested and probably spending a good chunk of his life in jail. They've now lost 4 out of 5. Cleveland, who knows how big 1 week off is going to help Baker Mayfield's non-throwing shoulder. Denver, can you really trust Teddy Bridgewater? Like, every time you're ready to write them off, all of a sudden they come back and beat someone they shouldn't, like last week against the Chargers out at Mile High. The teams that are, and then there's Pittsburgh, who Ben, I think, has finally come to the resignation that all of us have already known that this is going to be his final year. The team that's on the outside looking in right now that you have to really be concerned about is the Indianapolis Colts. That is the team that, no one should be wanting to get in. No one should be overly excited about the possibility of them getting, because they play, even for a dome team, they play the style of football that is needed at this time of year. That cold weather, ground and pound, run the football, dominate the line of scrimmage kind of offense with Jonathan Taylor, who he's probably not going to win the MVP since it's a quarterback favored award right now. But he's definitely going to be in the top 3-4 candidates when all is said and done. You look at where the Colts have only played, still have 4 games left to go. And he's already at 1,300 yards. He's got 16 touchdowns on the season. He's rushed for 100 yards in 7 games so far, and has another 4 games where he's rushed for over $140. He's just been astounding this year. Been that safety valve to allow Carson Wentz not to make as many mistakes and force them to be more of a run-centric offense. They're the team in the AFC to look out for. They're the team that, if Cincinnati or the Chargers slip up a little bit, they could pop right into the playoffs. Now, when you look at the seeding in the AFC, you have, the 4 division leaders right now are in a 4-way tie for 8-4, with unfortunately the Patriots as the number 1 seed. That could have been changed yesterday if John Harbaugh didn't go for a 2-point conversion at the end and would have sent out Justin Tucker. But I think a lot of the complaints I've seen from people on TV, heard from on radio, read online today, is more based off of the result of the play rather than, not trusting Justin Tucker. Because let's face it, look at, Lamar had TJ Watt right in his face. He kind of just had to zing it or he was going to get sacked and they wouldn't even gotten a playoff. And Mark Andrews, if you look at it, kind of turned around too early. If he would have kept going, would have had a better chance at catching the football there. In what was still a relatively catchable pass. So, probably 9 times out of 10, that's a play they make that they have a better shot at. But you had the potential front runner for Defensive Player of the Year in TJ Watt right in Lamar's face on it, and he made as good a throw in that circumstance that he probably could have. The concern, though, I have with Baltimore is, defensively, they're still getting the job done for the most part, even with now, losing another corner, losing Humphreys to what they hope is not an ACL injury. But, offensively, this is 4 straight games for them now that they've scored under 20 points. And, in the postseason, you're not going to be able to win every game 17-14. At some point, you want to have a deep, extended run. You want to be the team that gets out of the AFC, gets past, the Kansas Cities, the Buffaloes of the world, Tennessee, New England. You got to put up some points here. And with the way refs call it in the postseason, call it close to the vest, there will be the chance to score. And Baltimore's got to get their offense going, get things straightened out as they hit the month of January. Now, when you look at the NFC side of things right now, the top dogs in the playoff race, I think, have kind of cemented themselves. Arizona was able to hold tight without Murray and Hopkins for a couple of weeks. Were able to survive those injuries with Colt McCoy as their starting quarterback, and have maintained the lead in the NFC, but have to be wary of the fact that Green Bay is one game behind them and holds the tiebreaker on them for the number one seed in the NFC. You also have the fact that Tom Brady is not looking like 43, probably won't anytime soon, and is just continuously setting new bars, new records for himself. Yesterday, him and Gronk becoming the second most, how would you put it, when it comes to quarterback to a receiver or a tight end in this situation, have had the second most touchdowns together for any duo in NFL history, only to Peyton Manning and Marvin Harrison. So they're still lurking for the one seed. Dallas, even with how much Zeke Elliott is struggling, and their offense only won by 10 in New Orleans last week, they are still in the hunt, and they have a lot to play for because Washington has surprised us, won 4 in a row, 3 since the Chase Young injury. They're playing respectable football. Taylor Heineke is looking like a guy that, until you find a truly elite, better option, should stick as the quarterback for the Washington football team. They're only 2 games back of Dallas, and these two teams play twice in the final 5 games of the season. So not only does Dallas have to continue to play hard for pushing up their seeding and maybe make a run at the 1 seed, but they've got to hold off the football team for when it comes to the number 1 spot in the NFC East. And you have a whole bunch of these teams that are piled up at 5-7, 6-7, a game back of a postseason spot. With the Eagles, who are 6-7, even with the injuries that they've had, they lose Boston Scott, they lose Jalen Hurts, but Miles Sanders comes out and runs for 120 yards yesterday for them. The Panthers, who can't seem to get their quarterback situation figured out, yet are still somewhat alive. The Falcons and the Saints, the Falcons defense can't stop anyone. The Saints, I think they have too many injuries. It's becoming more apparent that this offense worked better under Jameis Winston. As much as we make fun of him for being the NFL's only 30 for 30 guy, they were more effective under Jameis Winston than they will ever be with either Taysom Hill or Trevor Siemian at the helm. But as I said, the hierarchy in the NFC has been decided. The questions to be asked are: Can Dallas hold off Washington football team, or are they going to have another one of these kind of choke jobs that makes you really question the whole America's team thing? Can Los Angeles make a run at Arizona for the top spot in the NFC West? And then who's going to be that 7th team to make the NFC side of the playoffs? Is it going to be San Francisco if Jimmy Garoppolo can stop turning the football over left and right? Or are the Eagles going to run their way into the mix here? Minnesota is still alive, but I really don't trust them to be consistent. I mean, yesterday should have been an easy win for them going up against the league's only winless team. And they give up a walk-off touchdown on the final second to the Lions for them to finally get off the schneid. So, while the AFC, things are clamped up, the NFC, things are a little more defined at the top. Can you really trust anyone in the bottom when it comes to the wild card mix in the NFC? But I will say one thing. This is going to be fun coming down the stretch here. Now, with this extra game on everybody's schedule, an extra week where potential all hell could break loose. I mean, this, especially on the NFC side of things, when it comes to these wild card spots and two potential divisions, is going to come down to the final week. Hell, you look at AFC, especially if the Colts can continue to dominate with the ground game and the Steelers continue to fake contention somehow, we're going to have a very fun month of December in the NFL. All right, I'll be back in a minute. Switch my attention to the NBA as they had a interesting week between things happening with the LeBron, the Nets, the Suns, the Knicks, even the Warriors. So continue to keep it sports with M3. Reminder, as always, you can find this podcast on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. On Instagram, our handle is at keeping_it_sports_with_M3. Yes, I know that's a mouthful to say, a lot of underscores there, but that's unfortunately what Instagram makes you do. On Twitter, it's at Keeping It Sports, and my personal Twitter account is at M3Rosansky. And on Facebook, find us facebook.com/Keeping It Sports with M3. 4 places that you will find the link to the podcast each and every single week, as well as you can go on Spotify, just type in Keeping It Sports with M3. Very soon, hopefully, I'll have it up on Apple Podcasts. Just got to work on some technical issues, should we say, when it comes to that. Now, last week in the NBA, we saw come to an end one of the best winning streaks we've seen in 5 years, when the Phoenix Suns historic winning streak for the month of November end at 18 games. They went 16-0 during November, had, after a 1-3 start, raced all the way up to the number 2 spot in the Western Conference, and all it took was a good night from Steph Curry. And when I say good night, I mean, for an average night for him, good night for some role players in the sport. But remember, Tuesday night he had the worst shooting performance of his career. You didn't expect awful back-to-back games for Steph like that. You expected him, especially in his home gym, to have some kind of response, some kind of bounce-back game. And hey, at some point, the Phoenix Suns, they were going to catch up to someone on a bad night. They were going to have an off game. You're not going to win every game. You're not going to go undefeated forever, but the winning streak they had was impressive. You look at only 8 games they won by double figures. So they were winning a lot of close games. Hell, 5 of them were won by 5 or fewer points. So they were showing heart, toughness, resiliency coming down the stretch. Devin Booker was phenomenal throughout this stretch, as you would expect him to be, leading with 24 points a game. Their defense played very well after what's been a slow start to the season for them. They held opponents under 100 points 8 times in that 18-game winning streak. And like I said, it was a winning streak that we have not seen in this sport in 5 years, becoming the first team to go 16-0 or better in a month since the 2015-2016 Golden State Warriors did in the month of November of their historic 73-9 season a couple of years ago that they would end up losing to LeBron's Cavs in the finals. Now, it was a weird week for LeBron as he had to miss a couple of games because, unfortunately, at first we thought he tested positive for COVID, but it would turn out to be a false positive on his test that he took out in Sacramento. Had to miss games against the Pistons and the Kings, but his crew was able to hold serve, even coming back from down 14 early against the Sacramento Kings to blow them out late. The Lakers, it's interesting. The big problem I look at with the Lakers is, what do you do with Westbrook and LeBron on the court together? Because Westbrook is a ball-dominant point guard, but LeBron James controls most of the offense when he's on the court. He's the offense going to facilitate through him. He's not just going to stand off in the corner and let somebody else do it. And meanwhile, when you have someone else controlling the offense, Westbrook looks lost out there. He kind of looks like he's just standing around. That's why it did not work out with him and James Harden in Houston like some would have hoped or expected. Plus, the Lakers, if they're not going to shoot well, they're not going to be an overly dominant team, because if they're not going to have big shooting nights, Anthony Davis has shown he's more of a finesse big man than he is a big, powerful brunt big man. He's more of a bigger Chris Bosh from his time with the Miami Heat, where he wants to shoot more away from the basket that he does want to dominate inside. And you saw the other night, when they don't shoot well from three, they are not going to win, even against average opponents like the Clippers. The Clippers, who they're still without Kawhi, who knows if he's going to play this year at all, don't have as much depth as they did last year. I mean, they were out Nicholas Batum the other night as well. And still, you got Serge Ibaka out there making 3-pointers, clogging up the paint. And the Lakers, right now, I know it's early, only 24 games, look like it, even for as many Hall of Famers as they have on that team, look like a very average team, a team that would not survive the Warriors, would not survive the Phoenix Suns if they play them in the postseason. Remember, the Warriors, they're doing everything they're doing. They still don't even have Klay Thompson. We're, 2 weeks away possibly from his return, and still hold the top spot in the Western Conference. Now, a couple of injuries that are somewhat concerning to look at when it comes to what we view as top teams in the Eastern Conference, both with the Nets and the Miami Heat. I mean, it's troubling to see that Joe Harris is going to miss at least the next month and a half, probably close to 2 months. We probably won't see him until end of January, beginning of February. And that was probably to be expected after he missed 6 consecutive games following the ankle injury in mid-November. And then last week it became confirmed when he had surgery and now is going to be out anywhere from 4 to 8 weeks. The positive here, though, is the fact that you can turn to somebody like Patty Mills, who you're getting at a bargain. You signed him for what, like, $6 million a year, and he's second to Harris in the NBA in 3-point shooting percentage. Has been a guy that on times where a certain starter is having an off night, he comes off the bench and just out of nowhere will have 25 points in a night. I mean, we knew he was a good 3-point shooter, but we didn't know that he was going to be this much of a point scorer, this much of an important piece of the Nets offense. The more concerning injury, though, to me, is the Bam Adebayo injury for the Miami Heat. That them losing him to a thumb injury for the next month and a half, missing anywhere from 15 to 20 games is a big loss for them, especially when they go up against teams with dominant bigs, teams that have that guy down low that is going to be a load to deal with. The 76ers with Embiid. Or, I know he's more so considered a power forward than he is really a big man, but going up against the size of the Milwaukee Bucks with Giannis or with Brook Lopez down low is going to be a problem for Miami while they have Bam out. I mean, you look Saturday night, they got blown out by the Bucks. A lot of it because the Bucks are dominating the paint. Out-rebounding them by 20. Outscoring them in the paint by 22. It was just a mismatch at times as far as the paint battle goes between the Heat and the Milwaukee Bucks, and you hope if you're a Heat fan that it's on the shorter end of things rather than the longer side when it comes to the recovery process for Bam Adebayo. But you look at the Nets and the Heat. At least with these injuries, they've created some breathing room for themselves. The Nets sitting there at the 1 spot in the East, even with how they've struggled against teams with an above 500 winning percentage. The Miami Heat, even after that blowout loss, they still sit in the number 4 spot in the Eastern Conference. That's not the same that we can say, though, for the New York Knickerbockers, who you're worried about this happening after last year's cute, surprising number 4 overall seed season that they had, where they just came out of nowhere, won over 40 games, were the 4 seed hosting a playoff series at Madison Square Garden before bowing out to the Hawks. I think we all said that they weren't the 4th best team in the East, and that they would probably slip in the standings, but they could still get better this year even without having that high a spot in the Eastern Conference. If anything, they have regressed this year. And this was a team that they had a lot of salary cap. They went out and spent it. And we're looking at a 1 game under 500 basketball team. They go out there, they lock up Derrick Rose to his contract extension. They give contracts to Evan Fournier, give a contract to Kemba Walker after he gets bought out by OKC following the trade with the Celtics. And this team is sitting here after 23 games at 11-12. Now, last week, you have their little crybaby fest in Brooklyn where Julius Randle is complaining about not getting the calls that he thinks as an all-star last year he should have been getting. They had to battle back from an early huge hole against the Bulls just to still fall short. And then Saturday night, they get blown out by the Denver Nuggets, who coming in had lost 7 out of 8 games and are without 2 of their 3 best players. We don't know if Jamal Murray is going to play this year. Michael Porter Jr., he might be lost for the season. And Jokic, you know that he's the reigning defending league MVP. And he's just running circles around the Knicks, posting up an easy 32 against them. And, you look at this Knicks team. They're an awful shooting team. They're bottom 10 in the league in shooting. They're spending way too much time whining, complaining, bitching about the referees not giving them calls, rather than be the aggressors, try to play that physical style that you're used to seeing from a Tom Thibodeau team. I mean, when have you ever seen a Tom Thibodeau team not show effort, not show heart, not show hustle? That's what they did on Saturday night. Only losing by 14. That was a very deceiving final score. This was an ass-kicking, what they suffered against the Denver Nuggets on Saturday. There's no other way to put it. Between that, bad shooting, the fact that they're overly reliant on Derrick Rose, complaining with the referees, and now the worst thing that could have happened with them, and that's that Kemba Walker is a total stiff. Listen, when you brought him in, you knew that he is not your traditional point guard. You knew that this is a guy that he's not going to be the spread the ball around the court kind of guy like you get with Chris Paul or like James Harden has been in his time with the Brooklyn Nets. That this is a shoot first, offensive oriented point guard for the New York Knicks. But the last thing we would have thought is that we are sitting here 20 games into this season, and that's all it took was 20 games into the regular season, and Kemba Walker is not only out of the starting lineup, he's out of the rotation altogether. He's been benched. Even with the blowout on Saturday night, he got no burn, he got no minutes on the court. And that's because they are an awful defensive unit when he is on the floor. You realize that the Knicks are a minus 122 with Kemba Walker on the floor. This is a former all-star point guard. This is the guy that, he's battled some injuries the last couple of years, but, he clearly didn't fit in Boston. You thought that, maybe it's just another example of what happened with Kyrie being on the same team as Tatum, Brown, Smart, and company. But no, we're seeing the complete and utter deterioration before our eyes of this guy. And where do you go from here? Like, what? No one's going to trade for him. Seeing how he's played with the Knicks and the fact that he's still got another year on his contract after, and it puts this front office in a bad position because they spent all of their cap money this past year. This team that they have right now, unless they make trades. And you're not going to get trades this early in the season, but unless they make some kind of trade, trade off someone's contract, this is the team they're locked into through the next couple of years. And the only way you're getting someone to take one of these bad deals is if you attach draft picks onto them. And listen, that is what put the Knicks in the hellhole that they have been in the last 20 years or so, where they were constantly attaching first-round picks to trading players. So that's not a road or a route you want to see the Knicks go down again. So they're really in a tough spot. We knew that they were going to regress to the means as far as standings go in the Eastern Conference, but you didn't think that they would become such a lackluster team that, struggles this much at home, is whining and complaining with the referees every night. And as a Tom Thibodeau team, having people question their heart, hustle, and whether they actually gave a damn, especially playing against a team without two of its three best players. Gonna take one final break, come back and finish things up, continue keeping it sports with M3. One thing that I always shake my head about is all of the outcries by fans of college football or, casual viewers of college football when it comes to players who either enter the transfer portal, who take what is later deemed an illegal benefit to help out their family, or leave college early and go professional. People always complain about that. Is say, oh, you're getting a free education. Why are you going to give that up? Even though, hey, the very next play could end your playing career, could put a hindrance, a dent into your long-term future. That's why I never got on Joey Bosa for sitting out of the Fiesta Bowl. You look at the other side of the field, and Jaylon Smith, his career was never the same after that. Yeah, he was eventually drafted by the Cowboys, but he was cut in the middle of his rookie contract. He never, or should we say early in his contract extension, he never got back to the level of talent that he was prior to that Fiesta Bowl injury. So, people who complain about these players leaving early, complain about them sitting out bowl games, all that stuff, they can all, quite frankly, go to hell with those complaints. With the continuation of what makes college football the ultimate cesspool, the ultimate embarrassment over time, with what you've seen from some of these coaching changes in the last week. You look at it with Lincoln Riley leaving Oklahoma because clearly he was afraid of them going to the SEC, realizing that I got a much better chance of winning, and not just winning the conference, but winning as far as getting into the college football playoff as the head coach of a Pac-10 team than I do as an SEC team. Because if he stayed with Oklahoma, he would have to have gone through Alabama, LSU, the likes of Georgia, because Kirby Smart's not going anywhere anytime soon. Auburn is always there. In the Pac-12, all you got to deal with is Oregon, and that might be questionable after today's seismic shift announcement. But, with that move, he's already gotten a lot of recruits and players that had committed to Oklahoma, drop their commitments and look at USC as a viable option, as an option to get back to what they were under Pete Carroll. Now, this week, we've seen even more change in the college coaching landscape. First off, Lincoln Riley will be replaced at Oklahoma by now former Clemson defensive coordinator Will Venables. But then what we've seen in the last week is just kind of disgusting and embarrassing. Take today, Mario Cristobal leaving Oregon for Miami. And you know what's embarrassing here? Not, the Cristobal end of things, because, he's going to get compensated very well, make $8 million annually, and Miami's going to pay his $9 million buyout. It's the fact that they were negotiating with this guy for the last month while Manny Diaz was still technically the head coach of Miami. I mean, it was the longest known secret that they wanted to move on from Manny Diaz. It had not worked out there to the extent that they hoped. And now they're bringing back, a guy in Cristobal who, he is a former Hurricane. He played there, and he's shown a lot of success with a Pac-12 team. Now they're hoping that he can come and have that same success against Clemson in the ACC. I mean, you look at Cristobal's resume, there's no denying it, that he's a very good coach. 2 Pac-12 championships at Oregon. He won the Rose Bowl 2 years ago, has won the Pac-12 North title 3 times, and went 35-13 over his time there. But just the way that this was handled was embarrassing. To me, not as embarrassing, though, as the Brian Kelly situation, which, what a surprise. Brian Kelly handling an exit awfully. Remember, back in, 2009 when he left Cincinnati? He made his announcement to his players at a team banquet that he was leaving. And that was after a 12-0 season that earned them a bid in the Sugar Bowl, and the team got their ass kicked by Florida in said game. Now, he's going from Notre Dame to LSU after a very successful 12-year run at Notre Dame. Going 113-40, had 7 10-win seasons, 2 12-win seasons. One of which got him to the BCS championship game against Alabama in 2012 that they would get smoked down in Miami. Even made the college football playoff twice in the last 3 years. But look at how he handled this exit. Notre Dame, going into last weekend, still had an opportunity. Well, it was an outside shot, still had a shot to get in the college football playoff. They were number 6 in the rankings heading into championship weekend. And he decides to make the jump from Notre Dame to LSU and inform his players via text message. Tell them, they did such a great job living up to the tradition and standards of Notre Dame, but I'm leaving. I'm no longer going to be your head coach. And then only speaks to them in person in an 11-minute team meeting on Tuesday morning before jetting out for Baton Rouge, Louisiana. I mean, he is the definition of an embarrassment and an impossible person to like or respect in the world of college athletics. And to make things even worse is the ass-kissing fest he put on for the LSU faithful on Wednesday. Because he has his introductory press conference, and then later that night, he speaks to LSU fans prior to the men's basketball team's game against Ohio. And here's where the problem resides in all this. Because all of a sudden, as he's speaking, he decides he's going to develop a very Southern accent there. You know, kind of like the fake Southern accent I just tried to do there. And makes an all-out ass out of himself. The fans are eating it up. But we all know there's nothing Southern about this guy. He was born and raised in Boston, Massachusetts. That's where his coaching career began years ago. And he spent the majority of his career as a head coach in Michigan, Ohio, and Indiana. Last time I checked, there's nothing Southern about any of those states. So please, Brian Kelly, come back to us here. I mean, that was just a joke, an all-out embarrassment. So, like I said, for anybody out there that complains about players leaving early, you better show that same kind of emotion, anger, and feel of betrayal toward these coaches. Because, let's face it, college sports, there's no loyalty to any programs anymore. There's just a loyalty to yourself and the almighty dollar. The money talks in that sport. And unfortunately, at times, it gets guys to do some very classless, disrespectful things. Now, I mentioned it, championship weekend this past weekend. There were 4 of these title games that we were going to be paying attention to, because I don't care what they say. Oregon would have had to have beat Utah by 100 to even have a shot as a 2-loss team of getting into the playoff. As long as it's 4 teams, unless everybody has 1 loss heading into championship Saturday, the committee is never going to acknowledge 2 losses when it comes to a playoff spot. That's something that they have been very hesitant to even cross the border of so far. But there were the things we were going to watch is, you had 6 teams for 4 spots. You had, Georgia, Michigan, Alabama, Cincinnati, Oklahoma State, and Notre Dame. And Notre Dame would have needed at least 3 teams to fall if they were going to get up. And those 3 teams had to be Alabama, Michigan, Cincinnati, or Oklahoma State. Now, 3 of those 4 teams had to lose for them to get in. Well, they got one of them. They got Oklahoma State early on, which, what do you know? The country was trying to put some faith behind a Big 12 team to finally get in that's not named Oklahoma, and they let us down because Spencer Sanders decides to throw 4 interceptions, be very loose with the football, and then Oklahoma State, just when it looks like the Cowboys are going to get right back in it, take the lead, they have their hearts broken when Desmond Jackson is stopped at the goal line with 30 seconds to go on 4th down. Remember, they had 1st and goal at the 2-yard line with a minute and a half to go. 4 opportunities to get in, get stuffed twice up the middle, and then you have this attempt at an end-around play by Desmond Jackson in which he misses the pylon as he's going out of bounds by about 2 inches. Now, everything else would play up to script. Everything else would play up to what you expect. Cincinnati, after struggling in the first half, would blow out Houston in the second half. Jerome Ford having another big day, putting up 180 yards. What we did not expect is the 2 night games with the SEC and the Big Ten to turn into all-out blowouts, especially with Alabama, for the first time this year, handing Georgia its lunch. This is a Georgia team we talked about having, anywhere from 8 to 11 pros on their defensive starting lineup. This is a Georgia team that had not allowed more than 23 points in a game this year. And they give up 24 in the second quarter en route to getting smacked by the Crimson Tide. Bryce Young, if he didn't clinch the Heisman Trophy on Saturday night, I don't know what they're watching, because he was astounding. He had another chart-topping performance. Now he has 43 touchdowns on the season to only 4 interceptions. And yes, he loses one of his best receivers to a leg injury early in that game. But Jamison Williams, was a man amongst boys on Saturday night. No answers by the Georgia secondary covering him deep down the field there. And, Kirby Smart and Georgia, I said going into that day, if not now, when? I mean, is that when ever going to happen for Kirby and company? We've seen them blow double-digit leads in the SEC title game against this team. We've seen them blow big leads in the national championship game, the Tua Tagovailoa coming out party a couple of years ago. And now this, having all year long the best defense in the country and getting smacked around by Nick Saban en route to having your first loss of the season. Now, thanks to some of the other losses around the country, Oklahoma State dropping, Notre Dame not playing a championship game, and the two lost teams not being respected, they still managed to make the playoff. The playoff starting on Saturday, or should I say Friday, December 31st, will be Alabama versus Cincinnati in the Cotton Bowl. And in the Orange Bowl, you'll have number 3 Georgia going up against number 2 Michigan after their 42-3 beatdown over Iowa late Saturday night. So that's your 4-team playoff right there. You have Michigan with their first opportunity to win a national championship since 1997. You have Georgia, who was the best defense all season long up until Saturday. Everybody's darling in Cincinnati. And then, of course, the Crimson Tide, who it's a dynasty that people want to go away, people wish would go away. But outside of 2 years ago when LSU was representing things out of the SEC, they've never truly gone away. Under Nick Saban, you change the quarterback, you change the faces, the names on this team. Hell, he loses members on his coaching staff left and right to become successful head coaches elsewhere. And they just continue to mow along and continue to be the dominant presence in all of college athletics. And like I said, Georgia, it was finally their chance to put old Saint Nick in his place. And instead, he's looking at another one of his proteges saying, "Not today, young buck. There's a reason why I'm 25-1 against my former coaches, against members of my coaching tree. And you're not going to be that number 2. At least not yet. At least not now." And that, my friends, was Keeping It Sports with M3 for Monday, December 6th, 2021. Like I said, hopefully next week we're back in the studio. Hopefully this COVID outbreak there is not such a big deal. Until then, everyone have a great week. Have a great night. Stay safe. Stay healthy. Stay happy. And I'll talk to you again, hopefully earlier than this, next Monday afternoon.
We have to go. Good night, everybody.
Peace.
I have had enough of you. Thank you for all the fun. Thank you. Hey, shut up, will ya?
I don't want to see you, I don't want to hear you, and I don't want to smell you. Now leave. I'll be back.